Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new season of Chats with Changemakers. I'm your new host, Luke, a ninth grader in Michigan who was first involved with Discovery through its middle and high school Future City program. Throughout the season, I'll be chatting with engineers from different fields, giving you a front row seat to how STEM is building a better tomorrow and how you guys can contribute. Now, let's kick off season 7 with some serious energy, because today's guest is a nuclear engineer who's bringing some real power into this season and the world. So let's welcome Temi Adeyeye. Temi is a nuclear engineer with more than 20 years of experience in power plant design, operations, and innovation. He's also passionate about engaging students like you in STEM through his work with the American Nuclear Society. Temi, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, Luke. Nice to meet you.
It's great to have you here. So, with all said and done, let's get started on these questions. First, to start us off, can you please provide us an overview on your career in power plant design and operations and tell us about your current role in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as mentioned, I've spent nearly 20 years as a mechanical engineer working on power plants, especially in the nuclear field. Early in my career, I helped design large power plants like the Westinghouse AP1000, and I worked on smaller plants like the small modular reactors coming out of NuScale, and more recently with TerraPower as a contract consultant. In addition to work, I've always been giving back to outreach and nonprofits and professional societies, so it's something that I really consider to be core of who I am. I've been really active in the American Nuclear Society, where I've led programs to connect students with engineers and careers. As mentioned, I'm a volunteer with Future City as a past judge and a Pittsburgh Regional Committee member. It's one of my favorite ways to kind of give back to the students and the community in a creative way, and then, by engaging in engineering.
And so I do remember when I did Future City for the guest awards, nuclear engineering is one of the more special ones, and it's one of the ones that stood out more. So what drew you to the field of nuclear engineering as it's one of the more unique fields of engineering?
Yeah, that's a good question. So actually, I started out as an industrial engineer in my undergraduate days. I worked a lot on renewable projects while at Penn State, solar and wind projects. And then when I graduated, that's kind of when nuclear energy was kind of being reconsidered in like a nuclear renaissance. It's kind of similar to what's happening today. And what drew me in was how nuclear was tied to energy and also because it provided carbon-free and reliable source of power. Um, Being in Pittsburgh also played a big role. Through my mentor and family friend, a person connected me through to Westinghouse Electric Company, um, which is a leader in nuclear energy for decades. And that connection opened doors for me to work on really exciting projects, and it led me on the path that I am today.
So it seems like you said earlier, jumping back to our introduction, you have over 20 years of experience in nuclear engineering. So with all of that experience as a nuclear engineer, what is the most surprising piece of knowledge that you can think of that not many people know?
Yeah, so I guess one surprising thing that's applicable to nuclear is how much energy can come from a very small amount of fuel. A piece of uranium the size of your fingertip can literally power as much energy as a ton of coal or barrels of oil. Another surprising thing that I like to bring out is nuclear energy is really all around us. If you take a step back and you think about it, the sun is a giant nuclear reactor. Um, Even inside the Earth, a lot of the source of heat comes from nuclear reactions that are occurring. So when we use nuclear technology here on Earth, we're really just tapping into the processes that have been around for billions of years.
And speaking of the things that you especially know about your career, I've heard that you've worked at big companies and also started your own business. What experience do you think had the biggest impact on your career?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that comes to mind is, um, one has to collaborate as a team, and you have to have a base of integrity. Starting out as an engineer, you really have to think about complex problems and how you're going to solve those problems. And then, but as you get older in your career, one of the things you realize is that having integrity and being humble, and kind of staying true to who you are as a person, really helps, and that shines, and that will take you a really long way. Um, so hopefully that answers your question.
And then you mentioning being humble, I would say a big part of being humble is kind of sharing the wealth in a way when it comes to knowledge. So, how would you explain nuclear engineering to people who may not know much about it, or to those who have concerns or negative views on it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I always try to do is just kind of stay simple and explaining to people that nuclear technology, it's safe, it's reliable, and at least in the United States, it's a significant portion of our energy that we use on the grid for that's carbon free. It's about 20% in the United States. And then the other thing that I like to say is, I just listen to people, I hear their concerns. Through a lot of the outreach that I've been doing over the years, you kind of realize that you're not going to win a lot of arguments with people who don't really like nuclear, to be quite frank. And so, I just listen to their concerns and, you know, tell them that, the future is bright. There's other sources of technology out there, like fusion potentially, that could provide other sources of energy that's even more safe and reliable.
And as you said, I agree with you with this statement. The future is very bright. So, what is one future trend or development in your field that excites you?
A future trend. Let me think. So I think a good one would be just honestly what's going on with AI, but also I'll say integrated energy systems. At least with AI, it's kind of allowing us to catalyze the need for clean energy. And then on top of that, we're starting to have things called integrated energy systems. So that's essentially pairing up nuclear power plants or other sources of energy with other types of energy. For instance, like nuclear with solar, or nuclear with wind, or nuclear with combined cycle. There's different types of energy sources that could be nuclear can be tied into, and that's actually kind of what we're doing with data centers too, or at least plan to do. So I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing as a trend, and it's a really big trend right now.
And so, I know a lot of our viewers, a lot of them already work in STEM fields, if it's at school. So, a lot of them may want to come into engineering fields similar to nuclear engineering. What is the starting salary of a nuclear engineer?
Yeah, the starting salary, it kind of varies. I would say it's between 65,000 to $75,000 a year. And then depending on the locality and how you enter the company, it could be higher. Some cities have higher pay scales. So, I think that's a good range. One thing I'd like to mention is that it's not just about the salary. It's also about, the company that you're going to be going to, making sure that you feel comfortable. And, there's mentors that you can learn. Having a good grounding is something that I look back in my career, and I'm very thankful for having that earlier on in my career.
And so, if any of our viewers do want to go into, will have any ideas of going into nuclear engineering, it is on the careers tab of on the Discovery website. And so that will be by the changemakers section. And so, speaking of changemakers, in what ways do you think your job encourages you to be a changemaker?
Oh, let's see. I think the way my job encourages me to be a change maker, and this kind of goes back to what I said about collaboration. I mean, in the nuclear world, like you're not no nuclear engineer or no engineer is going to solve problems just by themselves. It's very rare. So you kind of have to learn how to collaborate in a team. And then on top of that, I would say that I like to pair some of the work that I'm doing with external work. That could be through the American Nuclear Society, helping with codes and standards, or helping in discussions that lead to maybe reform and regulations. So those are the kinds of things. It's like you pair your technical work and you pair some of the things that are happening externally, and I think that's one of the things that makes a great leader in our industry.
And so, with that, what changes would you like to see in the fields of STEM today, tomorrow, and the future?
Changes. So I think one of the changes that I'd like to see is incorporation of applied learning. And what do I mean by that? Basically, with AI, to be quite frank, I mean, we have the capability to learn in ways that we weren't able to learn before. And so we're going to have to learn how to adapt to that. And we're gonna have to learn how to adapt to that, not only from the sense of technical adaptation, or adaptability, also from the standpoint of digital citizenship, because there's a privacy component to it, and how we deal with all this big data. It's going to be a really big problem to solve for the future. But regardless of that, I think figuring out how to apply the technology is just going to be something that is going to be really interesting as time moves on. I really don't think education will be the same from there on.
And so, this is a useful question for many of our viewers, as some of them may want to be engineers. So, what strengths do you have that make you a good engineer?
Yeah, we've touched on some of them. Well, one of the things you have to be good at, to be quite frank, is science, mathematics, physics. Those are the types of things that are kind of foundational to engineering. But then on top of that, you also have to be a team builder. You have to be able to collaborate, especially in the nuclear field. You have to be able to collaborate. There's always people who have some sense of more knowledge than you have. And so that requires like humility. Again, going back to that, and just kind of staying true to yourself. And just realizing that you're just one of many pieces of the whole machine. So that's one thing I would say.
And so, did you have any mentors who inspired you to pursue your path and got you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that there was a family friend who was a mentor who kind of got me tapped into Westinghouse earlier in my career. But there were also a lot of other mentors along the way that have helped me, move into other jobs potentially. It's always important to kind of connect with those people and connect with other folks that maybe have mentored you along the way to kind of help guide you as you grow in your career and grow in your professions.
And so, I'm thinking of the students joining us today and in the future. So, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I would say, just stay curious and stay creative, and don't worry if you fail. If you are going to fail, try to reach out to those friends and mentors to kind of help pick you up from those boots, from where you are, so you can succeed. The other thing I would say is, just keep having a spirit of learning and pursuing continuing education. That's one of the things as an engineer that's really important. As you start getting older in your career, you start realizing you need to start learning a lot more things just to stay competitive. And so that's one of the things I would say is that and it's not just about like getting your master's or PhD. Sometimes it's about getting your professional engineering certificate, a certification, or sometimes it's about getting like a project management certification.
And so it seems like you had a lot of influences on your way to being a nuclear engineer. I'd say for me, when I was in middle school, a large influence on me was Discovery's Future City program, which kind of inspired me to my path of maybe wanting to be an engineer. So when you were in middle school, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I when I was in middle school, I pretty much had an idea that I wanted to be an engineer. My parents, they were professors and they taught biology, and my dad taught biology and my mom taught industrial pharmacy. So I kind of had like a concept of like science and technology in the family and problem solving. Um, but then also I remember, when I was a child, when I was in elementary school, like my parents got me in this robotics program, and that was a long time ago. So, that kind of experience kind of really started to open up my mind to the possibilities and creativity of what engineering could be in the future.
And so what is one skill that all engineers of the future should develop?
Yeah, one skill. So I think we touched on some of those, but I would say communication. Communication is so key. Um, as engineers, oftentimes we're taught to know things, right? And we're very critically minded. So communication, combined with critical thinking, those are two things that really matter. And again, kind of going back to this like humility thing with engineering, like there's an aspect where you really have to, in order to communicate effectively, you kind of have to sometimes humble yourself to receive, that good communication back and forth with whoever you're talking to.
And so what would you tell kids who aren't so sure about engineering or who maybe think that they're not cut out to pursue engineering as a whole?
I would tell folks that, you know, engineering, there's many different pathways in engineering. Being an engineer doesn't just lead you to being just an engineer for your career. I know a lot of engineers who are managers and project managers who move off into finance or move off into supply chain and procurement. So at least in the nuclear world, that's something that's definitely exists where you don't if you're an engineer, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're going to be the rest of your career. The other thing I would say is, if you don't want to do engineering, it's still possible to work in a field that is related to STEM. There's plenty of folks who I've worked for in the past who work on graphics, graphic design and other things. So who are still part of the company, working for the mission of building nuclear power plants.
And so I'm sure you would know this as an engineer, but one thing I learned within the Future City program is the engineer design process, in which that has a lot of trial and error, which includes failing. So can you tell us about a time you failed at something and what you learned from that experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I like to think that I've never failed, but of course, that's one of those things that I failed more times than I like to admit. The one thing that comes to mind recently is there was a time when like there was a deliverable that needed to be finished. It took a little bit longer than expected, and one of the things that I found out was that I may have been more aligned with like a senior manager and maybe I wasn't as fully aligned with my direct manager at the time. And I probably should have engaged both of them into a conversation. And again, this is where it comes back to communication. One can't assume that the other person who you're talking to is going to see exactly your perspective. And so if you have the ability to let others see the perspective and you can do it effectively, don't be afraid of doing that. It really can go a long way. And the other part of that, again, kind of going back to critical thinking, is like, as engineers, we are by nature critical in how we do things. And so having a critical mind is really strategic, and combined with collaboration and communication.
And so now my favorite part of the show are the personal and fun questions. So for our next question, it's a fill in the blank. So I'm going to give a statement and finish the sentence with a word that describes yourself. So I am a blank. So a positive word that describes yourself.
All right. I am mission driven. Okay. So I chose that word because throughout my career, I've been working on energy projects and mentoring students and through outreach and whatnot. I've always been motivated by the bigger picture and helping build a cleaner and more resilient future. Um, that's really what drives me. And that's led me to programs like Future City and other community outreach efforts. So staying mission driven keeps me focused and it reminds me why the work really matters.
And for our next one, what is one thing you like to do for fun outside of your work?
Yeah, like so right now, I enjoy playing and coaching soccer and other sports. I love traveling and with friends and family. It really gives me a good way to see new places and experience different cultures. At home, I enjoy playing video games with my kids. It's a fun way to connect and just relax together.
Where's the farthest place that you've traveled?
Oh, well, probably like Nepal or China. I've been to Africa too, so I think New Zealand or Australia, it's got to be on the bucket list in the future.
Seems like you've been everywhere. Yeah. So if you any superpower in the world, what would you choose and why?
So, not to sound corny, but I would choose the ability to heal and to fix things. Kind of ties that engineering aspect, but not just physically, but also kind of with empathy. There's so much that we need to repair in the world today, whether it's environment or communities or just helping people feel like they're supported and heard. So, being able to bring both practical solutions, compassion into the mix really can make a big difference.
And so, what is one skill that you haven't quite mastered yet, but you would like to do?
Good question. So I was born in the United States, but I still haven't quite mastered like other foreign languages. I would like to learn Spanish fluently, and I'd also like to learn my ancestral language from my parents' side from Nigeria. Language is just a powerful way to connect with people and different cultures. So that's definitely a skill that I want to keep working on.
And I feel your struggle with language because I have a Spanish class in school this year, and it's been pretty hard to understand everything, but I'm trying. And so, for our last and final question, what is something that you've done in your life that you're extremely proud of?
Oh, that's a good question. So I would say when I was working at Westinghouse, we helped build a Westinghouse AP1000 reactor. I think being on a team that was involved in starting up the plants and power ascension testing really gave me a lot of really enriching experiences. Um, I would say that that's probably the one thing that really stands out right now. But yeah,
And so that's a great way to end our episode because with that, it looks like that's all the questions we have time for today. Again, a big thank you to Temi for joining us today and being the center of this month's episode. I know me and alongside our viewers have learned a lot. And so we also want to thank the American Nuclear Society for partnering with us on today's episode. Another thanks goes to our STEM driven students and viewers who tune in and fuel conversations like this. And if you viewers want to learn more about nuclear engineering, go to the careers section at Discovery's website at discovery.org. There, you can also check out more than 45 on-demand episodes of Chats with Changemakers. And alongside YouTube, you can access our brand new episode premiering on November 4th. Speaking of episodes, we also want to give a big shout out to our chat sponsors and to our chat sponsors for making the season possible. And with that, I'll see you next time. Always make sure to stay in tune and charge forward with Chats with Changemakers.
thanks for having me.